are aware and program. One, if we don't change the address, if the address remains the same, that we're not asked each time to provide that information. A lot of times we're asked within a certain limited amount of time to provide all the expenses, to provide all the information so we can continue to qualify for the program. But many times we don't receive any responses in return for those that we work with in a timely manner. If there are changes to our situation, I'm dealing with my sister having lost her disabled son right now, that she may lose her housing. Her situation is difficult. If I need to have her stay in my home, legally, I can't really do that. I have to report any changes, any family members coming in, any income coming in. But how do I do it within that limited space, within that limited time, without losing my voucher? So I need guidance. I need an understanding of the program. And perhaps I need a way for us to figure out a way that we're all human, dealing with difficult circumstances sometimes. And how is the commission able to help people in that situation? As we know, a lot of people are struggling with the government shutdown, everything else that is going on, that we can help each other, that we can make things easier for one another. Most of us are working very hard, and we're not living a fancy life. We're not trying to take advantage of anyone or anything. And we just need that dignity to be treated with the respect, the support that we need in difficult circumstances, and an understanding that not every time I have to explain what the program is, what the situation is, and perhaps for the commission to address why is there such a high turnover in staff? Why do we always have to get new case workers? Once a case worker has a load assigned to them, some people, new people come into the program, other people go out. Why do we have to keep changing them all the time? I don't understand those changes. They're very difficult for us. And as we know, it's very difficult to find suitable housing when you have a voucher. It becomes double as difficult in my situation for a landlord to understand not only the voucher, but also that they cannot disclose my address, they cannot disclose any information. So I like to find solutions. I'm trying to work with the state, I'm trying to work with the program, I'm trying to work with everyone that I have to deal with to find better solutions and better understanding. I came to an open house recently that there were new opportunities, new housing. No matter how many emails I sent, how many phone calls I made, no one responded. So I would like to see if there's a way to address things from top down, who the right people would be, how maybe some simple things could be adjusted in the system in a situation like someone like me, maybe a red flag or a little something that if a new caseworker comes in, they will know that maybe they have to treat that case a little bit differently. Maybe there's something different about that case. And a lot of times when I was submitting the information, I always submitted a page with index with all the information, all the pages numbered, what I submitted. And then I would get a phone call, we need a bank statement, let's say. And I said, well, if you look in the index and if you look in the papers from page 11 to 24, all of them are there. So sometimes they're not looking at everything carefully. Sometimes we're required to do things within a certain limited amount of time, within 7 days or within a certain amount of time. And in my case, I don't always get the mail right away because it goes to the state and then it comes back to me. So I've asked for some changes with a lot of people have been willing to understand and make a phone call or send an email to try to expedite the process. But also that process sometimes can be difficult because we're putting that information out electronically. So it puts me in a tough situation. So I would like an opportunity eventually to not necessarily address this publicly, but maybe find solutions that could be helpful for the staff and be helpful for everyone in the process.
Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your presence here today because it is through the kind of information we receive from our residents that we're able to take a look at the operation of our program, provide the kind of quality oversight that's always necessary. So I'm quite sure someone will follow with you very quickly. Our president and staff are here today, and they certainly have heard your presentation. And we as the commissioners will certainly follow up with the staff on the status of your case. So thank you very much for coming. The next item on the agenda is the report of our president, and I will turn to Chelsea Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the public, and the HOC team. I'm pleased to share an update as it pertains to our activities, and would ask that we move to the next slide. Commissioners, as you're aware, we have crafted our president updates to really hone in every month on one of our 3 primary goals in our 5-year strategic plan. We today will focus in on enhancing the lives we touch through supportive services and partnerships. This is our resident services component. Next slide. Just to make sure that the public is aware, we do have a dashboard on our website that allows for transparency and accountability for our 5-year strategic plan, which can be located at hocmc.org. As you can see, we've made a great deal of progress in a little over a year. We're close to 50% of completion of our plan. On an annual basis, we come before the commission and have an opportunity to share out that happened a couple of months ago. And with each of these subcomponents, there's an opportunity to dig deeper and to see where we are on track, where there's delays, what's coming up, what's been completed. Next slide. Again, today we will focus on enhancing the lives we touch. And there are a number of sub-goals that are identified with this particular objective. One is to enhance our resident services program. Another is to enhance partnerships with government and nonprofit partners, enhance wealth creation and home ownership programs, as well as enhance opportunities for applicants on our waiting list. Next slide. Some of the indicators for success is really looking at how many lives we're touching. And commissioners, you know that our focus is to provide support, not just for individuals who are in our properties, not just for individuals who have vouchers, but also to the many individuals who are on our waiting list. So I'll just lift up again for the public that if you are on our waiting list, please get on our listserv. Please go to our website. There are multiple resources, programs, and activities that we do provide to anyone on our waiting list. I'm proud to say on behalf of the leadership in resident services and for many of the team members who help make this a reality, we continue to increase our engagement. In fact, for FY26 Q1, you see that there was a notable increase, a 50% increase year over year in terms of the amount of people that we have touched and served. Next slide. Just to spotlight some activities, and moving forward, we'll also do programmatic spotlights, but this presentation gives a larger overview of our programs that took place over the last few months. There were road shows, really focusing in on how to partner with HOC. So we're really focusing in on how can we expand that network of nonprofit partners that we work with. We also had Section 3 vendor info sessions, and we're preparing to launch a new customer engagement strategy around the cradle to career model and whole family approach that was adopted by our nonprofit HOCP's strategic plan. Next slide. We also hosted a wonderful program of 4 one-week STEM camps for our youth. There was drone robotics, entrepreneurial classes. We also continue our strong and wonderful partnership with Arts for the Aging. They launched an Empower Project, which is an intergenerational program providing youth with opportunities to receive training and serve as fellow paid artists fellows, serving our adult communities. Next slide. Our FSS program had 10 new graduates with an average escrow of approximately $23,000, and we are at 408 in that program. The photos that you see here are from our wonderful graduation that took place a couple of months ago. Next slide. And as it pertains to enhancing our partnerships going into Goal 2B with government and nonprofit partners, you see photos reflecting one of the events that took place to raise money for our nonprofit Partner Fest 2025. We were successful in raising over $100,000. Want to thank all of our sponsors as well as our partners and individual donors who contributed towards this effort. But it was a wonderful turnout, and it is also a new approach that we will be taking in terms of hosting an event on an annual basis instead of every other year. Next slide. We do have some new partnerships that have been established. You see here where we spotlight a few: Chamberlain University, Flower Hill Elementary, and Children's Opportunity Alliance are 3 new partners that we've established. Next slide. And then moving into Goal 2C, which is enhance wealth creation and home ownership programs. We just wanted an opportunity to lift up the work that takes place with our mortgage finance team. You'll see that when we receive the money, it goes quickly. The demand definitely far exceeds the supply here, but we have demonstrated that year after year, when we have the funds available, we issue first-time homebuyer loans, as well as we support with down payment assistance. And so there were 34 loans that closed in FY26 Q1, totaling over $8 million. Next slide. And our mortgage purchase program is the program that assists with closing costs. You will see that in that first quarter of this year, fiscal year, we were able to provide over $800,000 worth of closing cost assistance. And in partnership with Montgomery County, we have new funding that was authorized for this, for the McCaff program that we administer. Next slide. This is going in the wrong direction here. You know, we want to see trends go up and we want to see some trends go down, but I don't think it's a surprise to see that, of course, our waiting list continues to expand quarter after quarter. We're currently at the end of Q1, 42,180 individuals on our waiting list. Next slide. Or families, I should not say just individuals. In terms of the legislative update, and I'm wondering if Ken may want to help provide this context, but this is something that I think even this morning there were updates to the slide, but the Senate has passed a CR resolution to reopen the federal government through January of 26. The House should be voting here in the next 40 minutes, and we will find out if the shutdown will end today. We are definitely anticipating that there'll be next rounds in terms of the third appropriations bill that will need to go through the process, as well as we provided information, commissioners, to you previously about some new bipartisan legislation that we were pleased to see, which was the Road to Housing bill. And our hope is that it moves forward. And so I'll pause to ask if there are any questions in regards to the legislative update that would warrant Mr. Silverman joining. If not, I'll move along. Okay, we're all tracking this on our own. Next slide. I just wanted to lift up some of our upcoming events that we have for the public. One, we have a holiday giving project that takes place on November 24th at Cider Mill Apartments. As you all may recall, the last time we held an event at Cider Mill, it was actually hosted by HOC staff from various divisions, and a wonderful outcome with over 600 residents and families participating. I don't anticipate anything different here. The need is great at this site, where we serve over 900 families in Gaithersburg. And so we will be hosting a holiday giving project there. And then our holiday store is our annual opportunity really to teach our young people what it means to be in the spirit and give back, actually. They come to the store, they're given HOC bucks, and they actually purchase gifts for their loved ones. They receive a couple of trinkets in exchange, but they learn the importance of thinking of those who support them, and they have a really fun time shopping. It also is a coat drive. And we last year realized how the need was so great there. And we quickly ran out of coats, and it was the first time we introduced the coat distribution. So if you have resources, please do support that effort. For the public, this slide also has information and the QR code. And again, anybody on our wait list, anyone in our programs is welcome to join us. This year, we will be hosting it at the White Oak Recreational Center. Next slide. And just really more for the board's awareness, there are some agency events coming up. We have our wonderful topping out ceremony for Hillendale, the Radia and the Lumina. That's really an opportunity to celebrate the construction team and subs who have worked really hard on getting to this milestone of completion. There's still a lot of work to be done, but this is definitely a milestone moment. And then just internally around this season, our staff really enjoy an opportunity to come together and work on crafts and make things. And it's an opportunity to share learnings around wonderful holiday crafts, et cetera. And so that's taking place at both of our sites. And with that, next slide. I open for any questions and or comments.
Any questions?
I had a question about the mortgage purchase program and the gap that we experienced after funds were exhausted. And, I note that, we had 0 in the fourth quarter because we didn't have any funds. Presumably, we only issued 9 in the third quarter. So presumably that was also because
funds were being depleted.
Yeah. And I guess my question is there a way for us to manage those funds in a way that when we know we're coming closer to depleting those funds, are we able to issue a new bond so that there aren't these gaps? Because I imagine that meant there was still demand during those quarters that went unmet.
And I'm certain there are definitely many factors that we're considering in terms of timing. And one of those factors also includes our hope for support with the state. But I do look to my Senior Executive Vice President, Kayreen Brown, to share any additional insight in terms of how we've managed the program and sequencing.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Kayreen Brown, as President Andrews said. We're somewhat strategic. The fact that you saw that dip in activity is somewhat strategic in that we're processing our bond issuance and managing the timing so that our bond proceeds are available and our closing cost funds are available. And the state has a program, as you know, and we're timing our issuance so that we're not in direct competition with the state. So, as you know, the state is able to make loans in Montgomery County as well. And so when their funds are available, we're monitoring their bond issuances and timing ours so that we're not in the market at the same time. When their funds are moving along, we're managing ours so that our funds become available and there is increased activity in our program. So the lower or decreased activity that you're seeing doesn't mean that we're not meeting the demands of Montgomery County residents. Their needs are being met across the board, whether from the state or through our program. We have a limited amount of closing cost funds, the state does as well. So needs are being met one way or the other. Our funds are being utilized, and at the end of the day, toward the end of the next year, we have more funds available, and because of our limited volume cap that we have available to us, we ensure that throughout the year on a more steady state, we have funds available to serve until the next bond issuance is approved by the commission into the next year. So we are meeting the needs of our applicants throughout the year, despite the dip that you'll see in our activity.
Okay. No, I appreciate that response. On a separate matter, and I sort of somewhat tangential to resident services, but having to do with our voucher program. I received a call from a former work acquaintance today who knew I was a commissioner and who was has somebody that they've been helping who I guess reached the top of our voucher list and was filling out their forms and was going to submit that. And they just were concerned that if there was any error, like that they wouldn't just be automatically rejected and then lose their spot. And I wanted to know what our process was. Like if somebody has an error in their application, do we work with them to like if they've been approved for the voucher, what that process is for making sure somebody doesn't lose their spot because of an error they might make? Definitely the process is that individuals are able to complete their application. If they need to update information in their application, they have an opportunity to do that when they're deemed eligible or not eligible. That happens actually at the time we request that information. So when you get on the waiting list, your circumstance may be in a different category than it is at the time that we're actually determining if you're eligible for the program. A notification goes out to that individual letting them know if they've been deemed eligible or not, which would afford an opportunity if there's a question about something that they put in their packet that might have caused confusion, an opportunity to address that. And so that's when hopefully that type of error could be addressed. If the individual is aware that they might have made a mistake in their application, they should definitely come down to our offices. Yeah. And they didn't think they had, they just wanted to know like what would happen. They'll receive if the error ultimately results in them not being eligible, then they will receive a notification that they're not eligible, which they can also at that time seek clarification and address if there's a concern about what they submitted that might ultimately result in a re-evaluation of their eligibility. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I know we work with, sort of when we've got somebody in place, keeping up their eligibility, and we do outreach to make sure folks don't lose their spots. And I was, so that's once they're in. I guess I was wondering if we did anything similar on the front end as well. So. Right. Well, we send a letter. Yeah. We don't give a call, but we do notify individuals if they're if they're not deemed eligible for the program, which hopefully would prompt an opportunity for them to say, "Hey, listen, why am I not eligible?" And have a iterative process at that time. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Nola?
Thank you, President Andrews, for the report. I know you shared a lot of great successes. But I did have a question about the wait list. Can you share some of the reasons why you think there's an increase? I know there's high unemployment and high cost of housing, but just some of your thoughts of why there's just such a high number or the increase.
I think that, of course, just across the region, there's been a challenge in terms of increase unemployment. There's definitely increased need just across the region and across the U.S. We are one of the few housing authorities that have taken the position where our wait list is always open. And so if they're looking to apply to other places and those wait lists are closed, they're applying here. We do lift up repeatedly, even here, you heard today, me acknowledging that there are resources available for individuals to take advantage of if they're on our wait list. So people know to come to our wait list. We have started our tours to tell our partners about how to make sure that their information and their clients are on our wait list appropriately. That ultimately is also going to result in more people joining the waiting list. And so the more people know that we're, available in terms of at least resources, even prior to entering into the program, and the more the need is, we will see individuals becoming active and joining our wait list. And so on an annual basis, we do send out and require that individuals update their information within the next over the course of the next few months. We will be taking a different approach with regards to the wait list, a new system, and it'll be an opportunity to even do some deeper dive on who's on the wait list and get some additional data at that time as well.
I also have another question. So it's great to see that there's an increase in engagement. Can you share a little bit more on how you count the engagement? Is that attendance to events, phone calls? What does that look like?
Yes, and it's a combination. And we also, in the past, used to provide in the board presentations a little bit more breakdown on all of the touch points. But our resident services team has a stabilization division that focuses on providing referrals. So it includes the number of referrals that we've made out for resources across the county. It includes the number of people that we've reached out to assist with regards to ensuring that they remain active in our programs and compliant in our programs. That's a great deal. It includes the number of walk-ins that we get. And we receive hundreds and hundreds of walk-ins across our 4 offices. So every single touch with every single resident counselor. It includes our events and the participation in each of those events. It includes just any and every opportunity we have in terms of connection with our residents. And that's how we're calculating what and how our reach is.
Question, Linda?
My good evening, everybody. My concern is the waiting list. The 42,180 people on the waiting list. Now, first and foremost, how long do they stay on the waiting list? Do you have a number of how long someone would stay on the waiting list? And 2, when they're on the waiting list, do those people do IT have a way of getting the people off that may be expired that's been on there a long time?
So let me answer that last question first. On an annual basis, anyone who's on the waiting list must update and confirm that their information is active, their contact information is correct. Taking that step results in that individual remaining on our waiting list. We will be undergoing a process in the future as we look to new technology of transitioning people to a new platform. That will be an opportunity to really level set if there are changes in income or interest. And it might result in a reduction of individuals on the wait list. At this point, everybody has checked off that they want to be on in every program. And we have a lot of programs, as you can imagine. So stay tuned. There'll be more information coming up soon there. As it pertains to your first question, which is how long does it take to really get to the top of the list? For individuals who are waiting on the list for a voucher, the average time is about 6.5 years before they will get to the top of the list. However, there are other reach outs that happen, project-based voucher units, the other programs that we have, units that are available in scattered sites, or if a program, for example, is very specific for certain populations, we have a shorter time frame for those different programs and those different needs. It just depends on the different program. But the average individual is on our wait list with the goal of obtaining a voucher. That typically takes 6.5 years.
And in a person that may be expired and they were on the waiting list and they was doing everything that they supposed to do to stay on the waiting list, but they expired. Do they get off, or do y'all get some type of notification that that person isn't no longer, and then that frees somebody else up to get a place?
Well, the waiting list is open, so anyone can get on the waiting list at any time. And so in terms of what happens if you do not update your contact information and the notification that goes out, I'd have to get back to you to find out exactly what the method of communication is to determine how we notify people that they are being removed. But I do know that when we're reaching out, for example, for units for project-based voucher, you get 2 offers. A letter will come out saying that this is your last offer for a project-based voucher unit. As a result, you're being removed from that list. And so that is typically the approach that's taken if someone is going to be removed. But we're only contacting them based on their last known contact information. So if they did not update their contact information, we would have no other way to locate that individual.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to apologize, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues and President Andrews and to everybody's staff for being late. The train was late. That's my best. That's my. Can I have fun? You said 2 offers from the project-based voucher list, or did you mean the housing choice voucher list?
No, with the housing choice voucher, the individual takes the voucher and they have a search period and they go out and find their own unit.
Right.
With project-based vouchers, those are specific unit offers, and our regulations were updated just last year. The commission approved a shift so that we could begin to move more quickly through that waiting list, or those waiting lists for those properties, and allow individuals to get 2 unit offers.
And how much time, once you get a mobile voucher, do you have to look to find a place?
Right. The search time, I believe, is 90 days, but you can, at that point that you need an extension, request an extension.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one question on the dashboard, which is very powerful information. I always like that. How do we inform the public and the residents about the availability of the dashboard?
We did a major media public marketing campaign when we launched the website. And when we launched the dashboard, we sent out correspondence. We updated our website so it was fresh there. We did a social media push and highlighted it there. We sent letters to all of our key stakeholders. I mention it at every board meeting, and it's on our website. But in terms of, and I think in our communication, quite frankly, whenever we have an opportunity, when we're sending communication to our residents, we hearken back to our strategic plan and our website. We really want our residents not only to go to the dashboard, but also to register for the resident newsletter.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to know. One last point. The next time that you give a report on enhancing that goal, could you just give a little bit more detailed information about the Section 3 performance?
Section 3 performance.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Seeing no other items, thank you very much for the present report. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Commission's Exchange. Nothing to share today?
Well, I came prepared just to let my fellow commissioners know and the staff here about 3 very interesting events I was able to attend in the last week relevant to our work. The first one was an event last Thursday at the Chamber of Commerce that was hosted around increasing the supply of affordable housing in America. And I think the meta message of the event was the leading business trade association is stepping up their game to try and support the strategies to increase the supply of housing in general in the country. A couple of things that stood out for me, Chelsea, in your opening remarks, you mentioned the Road to Housing bill. That's, of course, was a huge part of the narrative of the event. as they're trying to organize the kind of political pressure to get it passed by the House. But and then many of the things that the Road to Housing bill addresses, like getting rid of permitting barriers and increasing the speed of housing and opening up land for affordable housing development, were part of that. Glad to share more about that and with my fellow commissioners and others if people are interested. The second event I attended, I recommend to all of us to go back if you didn't see it, was hosted by the Bipartisan Policy Center, which is an organization in DC that is just what it said. It brought together former Democratic and Republican senators and members of Congress to try and come up with policy solutions in this day and age that both the Republican and Democratic parties could support. And this particular session was on improving the housing voucher program. And the three speakers included a woman who was a researcher from the Turner Center in California, a guy who represented the National Multi-Housing Council, which is the big multifamily developers or owners in the country. And then a third guy who used to be the Public and Indian Housing Assistant Secretary in the first Trump administration. But they were a very interesting session, all of them calling for different ways to streamline the program, to increase its acceptance by landlords in the marketplace. And I know they recorded it, so it'd be available on the Bipartisan Policy Center website. A couple of things that came out of that for me was one of the speakers just basically wanted to streamline the program entirely, get rid of inspections, just rely on local inspections and codes to support the program, and to put in electronic benefit payments as a way to pay the landlords in the program, which I thought was that using that technology was an interesting thought. And then the third, one of the other speakers was very much in favor of way more flexibility for the public housing agencies based on the size and the different markets that all the public housing agencies are operating in. It sounded to me, Madam President, more like a moving to work framework for all in the public housing lexicon. And then finally, the third thing I attended on Monday was the Montgomery County Food Policy Council. And of course, the conversation at that time was still about whether the food, when and whether the food stamps were going to be restored, how increasing numbers of people were showing up at food pantries and other food distribution sites here in the county, and including especially government workers, and how the county council has stepped up to provide money for that, as well as the state, as ways to fill in some of the gaps in our access to healthy food system. But one of the interesting speakers of that, particularly relevant to our work, was a nonprofit in Silver Spring that is running $1 million grant program from the state that provides payments to families who are housing unstable. They have backlog on their rent payments or on other payments related to their housing that are threatening to them getting pushed out. And they've formed a liaison between the grant makers and the schools to identify these families and try to do outreach to these families who need help paying their rent to stay in their housing and not be threatened with losing their homes. So anyways, just thought I'd share those three things. And again, I have a lot more notes on them if anybody's interested in discussing them more.
Very good. Just a point of information you all are probably aware of. Montgomery County is always known for being first, for doing something. And I was very impressed with the fact that Montgomery County was the first one to set up an actual center to assist displaced federal workers. And it has a whole compendium of services that are available for families who have been displaced. And so we know of anyone in our families and who we may be serving, that's a service that is available, and we want to make sure they take advantage of it. So I want to pass that on. Zola?
And I just wanted to add to your point, Mr. Chair, Mobilize Montgomery is the name, and it's located in Wheaton. And they provide a lot of opportunities for job placement, as well as if you want to start your own business and want to transition to a different type of career.
Mm-hmm. Very good. No other comments. We will move to the next item on the agenda. also for our closed session. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second. Been probably moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The approval of the minutes, I believe the minutes, in fact, United Bank, yes.
So moved.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Chair, please.
25-65. This is resolution 25-65. Can I get approval of that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With that, we'll move forward with the next item. A consent agenda, which is it's on. You want me to talk louder? The
Well,
next item
let
on
us
the
do
agenda,
a quick IT check so that we can make sure that it's getting your, okay, thank you.
the next, on our committee reports, our first committee is the Administrative and Regulatory Committee, which is chaired by Commissioner Kroon. I'll turn to her for this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on the agenda is the committee report and recommendations for action. This is so, I can't hardly see it. Beginning with the Administrative and Regulatory Committee. The committee is chaired by me, Linda Kroon, and I will introduce the authorization to implement voucher payment standards based on HUD CY 2026 small area fair market rents. I will turn this over to our president, Ms. Andrews.
Thank
President
you.
Andrews.
Thank you. Commissioners, this is our standard item that comes before the commission on an annual basis, where our team has an opportunity to present a comprehensive analysis of our current voucher payment standards and ultimately make a recommendation on where we may want to make modifications in order to address two key areas. We focus in on reducing rent burden. That's an area of focus. And at the same time, trying to ensure that we maintain an appropriate recommended reserve balance. Having too much reserves puts us at risk for recapture, and having too little reserves puts our program at risk. And so the sweet spot is about 4%. And the analysis that the team undertakes ultimately is extraordinarily comprehensive, but again, focused on those two key components. This presentation did come before our ARC committee. There definitely was a great deal of interest in regards to our approach. And of course, those committee members will raise their questions, but I do want to just highlight that the work that we've done here reflects the strategies and the approach that the commission has taken to date in regards to how it approaches our payment standard. And it's a recommendation to go up to 113% in our payment standards. With that, I will turn it over to Lynn Hayes, our Vice President of the Housing Resources Division.
Thank you, President Andrews. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Lynn Hayes, Vice President of the Housing Resources Division. Annually, the Department of Housing and Urban Development publishes the fair market rents. We use these amounts to determine the voucher payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The fair market rents represent the cost to rent a unit in the local housing market, and it includes the cost of utilities. The voucher payment standards represent the maximum amount of subsidy that we, HOC, would pay a landlord on behalf of a Housing Choice Voucher family. We've been doing or using small area fair market rents for quite some time, beginning in 2018. Small area fair market rents are established by zip codes and bedroom sizes within the metropolitan areas. HUD allows housing authorities to establish the voucher payment standards ranging from 90% to 110% of the published small area fair market rents. HUD published a notice in 2024 allowing housing authorities to increase the voucher payment standards up to 120% if certain criteria is met. The first criteria is if families with issued vouchers have a success rate of 75% or less in finding a unit to rent. And the second criteria is if families who are rent burdened, more than 40% of our families are rent burdened. We meet the first criteria and that our success rate, our families with issued vouchers, is less than 75%. Our success rate is about 63% currently, which is a little bit higher than the national average, which is 55 to 60%. We are recommending 113%, as President Andrews indicated, of the published small fair market rents for all zip codes and all bedroom sizes in the county. This year, we saw a pretty significant decrease in fair market rents. The FMRs decreased in the majority of our zip codes, 59 of our 71 to be exact. So that's a little bit different than what we saw last year, where we had increases in the fair market rents. By approving this 113%, it will allow our families with access to greater opportunity areas while increasing our utilization and maintaining a reserve balance of 4.4%, which is what HUD recommends between 4 and 6%. Next slide. So every year we go through a pretty laborious process of determining what these amounts will be. We have a team of analysts who review the data, the raw data, which is a lot of data to review. Again, it's 71 zip codes, 4 bedrooms by zip code, so 355 values altogether, and then all of our families, our 8,000 families. We also use HUD software, which is called Tool of Tools. And then lastly, we use a function in Excel called Solver. So the result of using all 3 of these approaches resulted in a recommendation of 113% of the published fair market rents. Next slide. So the next 2 slides are showing you where our families reside. Though there are 71 zip codes, our families reside primarily in 39 of the 71 zip codes, the majority of them being, next slide, in Silver Spring. So 2,445 families reside in amongst the 8 zip codes in Silver Spring, as you can see in this slide. Next slide. We have limited space in this area. The agricultural reserves limits us from renting or building primarily in these areas. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, there were notable decreases in the fair market rents. Again, decreases in 59 of our 71 zip codes. As you can see from this chart, the significant top rows reflect decreases in Brinklow, Bealsville, Highland. Fortunately for us, we don't have families who reside in those zip codes, so they're not really impacted. One thing to mention, when the fair market rents decrease and we see a decrease in our voucher payment standards, they are not effective immediately, but 2 years after the effective date. Next slide. The fair market rents have increased in 12 zip codes, ranging from $10 to $670. As you can see, significant increases are in Garrett Park and Mount Airy. Unfortunately, we don't have families, any voucher families living in those zip codes to take advantage of the increases. We do, however, have some families in Bethesda and Gaithersburg, where the FMRs have increased. Next slide. So there are high opportunity areas, which are areas where families have better long-term economic outcomes. This slide is showing some of the high opportunity zip codes where our families reside. So specifically Bethesda, Potomac, Chevy Chase, we have some families there. High opportunity areas are areas where there are low poverty rates of 20% or less and high resources access to jobs, transit, healthcare, and quality schools. Next slide. This slide represents where our families live. So we've listed the top 15 zip codes in the top of the slide. The bottom of the slide is more specific. As I mentioned earlier, 2,445 families live in Silver Spring, followed by Germantown, then Gaithersburg. Conversely, the right-hand side of the slide is showing where our families don't live. So we don't have many families in Ashton, Poolsville, Brookville, etc. Next slide. This slide is showing you the bedroom sizes that our families occupy. This year, we've seen a growth in one-bedroom families where 43% of our families occupy one bedrooms, and that may be attributable to a growth in the senior population that we serve. So our senior population that we serve has increased from 34% to 38% this year. Notable small decreases in 2 and 3 bedrooms as well. Next slide. This slide is showing where our families are rent burdened. So the top 15 areas, most impacted areas are Germantown, Silver Spring, and Clarksburg, all of which had decreases in the fair market rents. Next slide. So we're proposing again voucher payment standards of 113%. We wanted to provide you with an overview of what it would look like if we were to elect a different range. So if we were to choose 90% and reduce our voucher payment standards, more than half of our families would be rent burdened. We would increase our reserve balance to about 24 million and be at subject to HUD recapturing a good portion of those funds. The last row is showing 113, where we are projecting 953 families will be rent burdened. Our projected reserve balance would be about 6.2 million or 4%, and none of that money would be at risk of recapture. Next slide. The financial impact, if we were to approve these payment standards, we anticipate that our expenses would be approximately $145 million. We estimate HUD funding, if we're paid at 100% proration, to be 141 million, and we have 10 million in reserve. So overall, 151 million to pay for the projected expense of 145. We also anticipate increasing our leasing and utilization. We're working tirelessly to increase our utilization, calling up or selecting families from our waiting list in high volumes. On average, we have about 67 new admissions per month and 57 families who leave the program. So it's a net of about 10 new families per month that we add to our program. Next slide. So overall, we presented this information to the Administrative and Regulatory Committee on November 3rd, who endorsed this recommendation. We are requesting approval to have voucher payment standards at 113% of the published small area fair market rents. If approved, they would be applicable for all new admissions, all new families selected from our waiting list January 1st. 2026 or afterwards, and for all annual recertifications and interim actions as well, effective January 1st or later. Our anticipated reserve balance would be about 4.4%, assuming that we receive funding at 100% proration. And at this time, I will answer any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we go to slide 10, please? Great. So I think this is I really like this slide. Thank you. And President Andrews, I've heard you say, in addition to the reducing rent burden and maintaining appropriate reserves, providing, I mean, we talk a lot as a goal, a strategic goal for the agency is economic growth and wealth building and independence. And I really think that's important. And I just want to underscore that and appreciate that we're thinking about using vouchers in high opportunity areas. And and defining it here with some detail at least. So if you add the number, I mean, roughly adding the vouchers, it's about 230 of our 9,000 vouchers are used in high opportunity zip codes. I guess one of the things I'd like us to think about is how we can grow that number as much as possible, given the constraints that we have. So if we could take a look at the next slide, I would be very interested to know what the average or the median incomes and the poverty rates of the other zip codes, not at this second, obviously, what the median incomes and poverty rates are in the zip codes where our vouchers are concentrated. I think that would really help us think about growing the number of vouchers used in the high opportunities in the previous slide. So just for future consideration. And then
I'm sorry, Commissioner Miller. Can you please elaborate on that request and where you see that connection as it pertains to your thoughts around, so the average income? So for example,
and poverty rate, right?
Right.
So is it the case now that our vouchers, so we have the 230 or so vouchers that are used in the high opportunity areas, and we've defined that in terms of poverty rate. I would be curious, and I think it would be helpful in terms of us thinking about what payment standard might be in the future, whether or not the places where our vouchers are so highly used have much higher poverty rates, and therefore presumably maybe less areas of opportunity.
And I think we provide that on the next slide. In terms of where we have zip codes with the most families, and then we've identified ultimately where the high opportunities are. What you're trying to determine, I guess, is related to our own individual families and what their poverty rates are? No.
So zip code 20874, the top one, I'm looking at slide 11, has the most vouchers that we use there. Is that sort of a average zip code in terms of income and poverty for the county, or is that a high poverty zip code? Or is the income in the zip code, not necessarily our voucher holders? I mean, because I think that would be helpful to know for this purpose.
And so, and I know, and I'll try to take a note of some of the questions. I know there was a couple of data point questions that came up in the ARC committee. I will just note that if we undertake that analysis, we will need to, one, plan for it and come up with a strategy on how we will go about staffing that level of analysis and what sources we would think would be good sources. But then secondly, obviously individual families' income vary, meaning all it takes is getting a second job or losing a job. And so trying to determine what their income is doesn't necessarily, as we're looking at payment standards, we're looking at what the average rent is in each location, and they only pay up to 30%, even if their income is zero.
No, I understand that. And I'm not asking for the voucher holder's income.
Oh, I thought you just
No.
what the average,
what the income is in that zip code.
Okay, so then we'd have to see what sources we would be able to rely
I think that's probably
that would give us the average income per zip code. Now, I'm not certain where we would find that data, but we can definitely.
I'm guessing the census.
Census does that. They have the
right. I don't know how
survey.
Right. So and they do it per zip code, and as of
they do it by census tract. There may be. I'm not sure whether
they do it by zip code or not. But without solving for that,
it's the American Community Survey.
Right. And then, I guess my ultimate question then is, if we go to slide 14, so I think it's great that we're going to 113, because I think that is going to give us our voucher holders more options for places to use the voucher. Do we have to have one payment standard for the whole county?
No, in the past, actually, I think at one point, the commission many years ago had different payment standards in different zip codes. I'm not certain. And of course, we can come back and share more insight in regards to how effective that was. But the commission ultimately transitioned to a strategy of across the board.
I can imagine that would be administratively
There's 71
much easier. I'm wondering whether there's a middle ground where we could, and again, I'm not making a specific proposal, but just thinking through some of the issues related to the payment standard. If you could raise the payment standard in the higher opportunity census tracts, making more units affordable to the families who have them, and maybe in census tracts where FMRs are, or zip codes where FMRs have dropped, maybe, presumably FMRs dropping is a reflection of rents actually dropping, right?
Yes.
So maybe the payment standards in those areas should be reduced, and could be reduced without necessarily hurting the residents, because presumably they're reflective of the rents overall dropping. So I'm not suggesting any change in policy here, but I do think understanding these things more better would inform us when we do this again next year.
Well, let me just for a moment on that one point. I know when there was a variable rate that was available in different opportunity zones, census zip codes, it did not produce any measurable change at all in voucher utilization in those areas. And with the amount of administrative burden and cost associated with trying to administer that diversified program, is why the commission decided to go to one fair market standard to do that, because it did not generate any kind of measurable change in improving the residents moving to those areas. So that was the reason why.
Yeah, I don't think voucher holders are aware when a voucher payment standard changes from zip codes. And I also think in high opportunity areas, I wouldn't be surprised that the landlords aren't as receiving. And in other areas that are poorer, they may be more. It's an unfortunate fact, but I think that's true.
Yeah, no, so I think these are the kinds of questions we should be. If it's the case that voucher holders are not aware of the opportunities that a higher payment standard might provide them in certain areas, that begs the question to me is, could we be doing something to make
it's a two-part
them?
problem.
Understood. And I just think, I think we should be, I think if we have some more information, we could have a more in-depth conversation about whether or not we want to go to that kind of program. I'm not proposing.
Some jurisdictions I've read, not here, will reimburse landlords if their unit is adversely affected by a voucher holders, to make them more receptive to accepting. And so it's a very complicated issue beyond just the payment.
Understood. Yeah. Understood. Thank you.
Let me just say, one of the things that I think all of this is great discussion, and certainly I'm trying to deal with the fact we've got before us now a proposal to raise our standard to 113%. Now, all this information, while it'd be interesting to look at it, I'm trying to understand how it's going to impact the decision the commission makes right now about adopting the recommendation that's been made. Now, going forward, is something we wanted to look at for future decisions in that area, then that's something different, okay? I just want to separate those things, okay? Because what we're trying to get right now is a decision to approve a recommendation that's been made by the staff based upon the analysis that they've done of 113%. That's the standard we're looking to adopt. So if there's other information, that's fine. You raise them, but it's just, I'm hoping you understand, I'm hoping you're not using that as a basis not to approve this recommendation.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I just do think for future, for thinking through these issues going forward.
Do
Mr.
we
Chair,
have any
it's-
more questions?
I just had one more comment. And that's exactly where I was going to start, Mr. Chairman, is that my comments have nothing to do with today's proposal. Staff has done a terrific job. You met the standards on reserves, on reducing rent burdens, all good. And as a member of the committee, we process some of these issues at the committee level, and we're prepared to recommend that the whole commission support the work today. And then I wanted to endorse some of the questioning, particularly coming from Commissioner Miller, in that I really would like to, over the next year, find a way to process, to understand better what has happened already. When we went to small FMRs as a nation, it was all about helping voucher holders get to play communities of opportunity, right? We know from Dr. Rod Schetti that kids growing up in these high opportunities places have a much better chance of better life outcomes, right? And so all that I'm probing in my questions on this are, where are we now in terms of giving our kids the best opportunities based on geography? And are there things we could do in the program to improve those opportunities, like economic incentives, higher payment standards that would encourage movement to those places from places that aren't considered as much opportunities? And so all I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, is I'm hoping that that before the payment standards next year, there's a process that we can at least have this conversation and think about whether there's other approaches we as a commission could take to create those opportunities.
And I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And I also say, if we're going to do something like that, that the other important ingredient in this discussion are the residents. Okay? And maybe we need to know a little bit more about why doesn't a resident want to move to zip code 2937? Okay? Also means what you call opportunity zone areas. There are reasons why they don't. And besides, in addition to what Robin has said in terms of participation of landlords in those zip codes, it's just other reasons that people make decisions about where they live. And we need to understand that, as well as understanding these other data points that we're talking about as well. So I just want to
I guess I'd like to just also, I support the current proposal. I also support the goals of having as many of our residents, voucher holders, in opportunity zones as possible. I would be curious, the extent to what research is already out there about how effective, tweaking the payment standards may be or may not be. So that would be one. I would be cautious about us experimenting too much with that because to Roy's point, I'm also a little concerned about whether we end up inadvertently penalizing, voucher holders who do choose not to live in opportunity zones for what may be very legitimate reasons. So I think the goal of encouraging voucher holders to move to opportunity zones, if there is evidence that supports, that there's something we can do on that end, would be very much supportive of that, while also, keeping in mind the legitimate reasons that voucher holders may not pursue, and making sure we're not penalizing them.
I think these are all really valid questions. I think coming back to the ARC committee to explore further on this particular point, maybe commissioners could also get engaged with the research that you've done and bringing that to the committee. This surely could be a joint effort. I would just say that if there is going to be a shift or a policy change, it is a policy shift. Our focus has been on rent burden. We've been able to serve a large number of people. When you make changes and you increase your payment standards to a certain amount, you end up reducing the number of people you serve. So there is definitely a balance. And the other thing I would just note is there are areas where we would have to go pretty significantly high in order to even be able to introduce individuals to that particular zip code. There are areas where there's 0% affordable. And the way that we have tried to tackle that has been through thinking about preservation, which is why we purchased 900 units in Bethesda, where we look at potential opportunities to develop. We have, of course, we do a rent reasonableness evaluation when someone is interested in using a voucher in an area in a zip code. And so definitely there's a lot of considerations here. I do want to just also say that as the research project gets larger and larger, the longer we talk, there's that other component in regards to if this is something we, the board, unanimously want to undertake, then my recommendation would be that we potentially explore an RFP to have some support around and potentially a consultant that could help undertake this additional work. So we can revisit that request and discussion through committee and ultimately bring it back to this board.
I move acceptance of the resolution.
Resolution, no.
This is
Resolution
20
2566 is on the table.
Yeah. Second, a motion made to approve
Mhm.
resolution 25-66. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposers, nay. So ordered. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
one of the things that, just to, as we move on, is I think that the underlying themes of what we're talking about now factor a great deal in our decisions that we make about our development projects that we pursue. And I know we have looked and talked in the past about looking at areas like Clarksville and other places where we look at opportunities so that we can in fact begin to provide a more diverse set of options for our residents in terms of looking at affordability and location. So you want to acknowledge that staff does do that on a regular basis, and it's included in the analysis that they usually get for development projects that are presented to their staff. So thank you all for that. With that, let me move to the next item, which is the committee. Before I do that, let me go back before we start that. Mr. Panchek, I see you've come in, and let me afford you the opportunity to come before the commission and represent the Investment Advisory Board.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, President Andrews, staff, and members of the public. For the record, my name is Adam Pinchuk. I am President of the Resident Advisory Board, and I'm here to provide a brief update from our most recent meeting held on September 20th. During that meeting, the board received a presentation from Davida Rowley, Vice President of Resident Services, and Anita Inman, Program Coordinator of Resident Services. Davida and Anita shared a thorough overview of the important work being done by the Resident Services Office and the key issues their team addresses within the tenant community. They also took time to respond to several questions from board members about different aspects of resident services. On behalf of the Resident Advisory Board, I'd like to extend our sincere thanks to both Davida and Anita for their time and valuable insights. In addition to that presentation, the board voted from a slate of qualified candidates to fill the LIHTC, Housing Choice Voucher, and Project-Based Voucher vacancies that are currently on the board. We anticipate that these new members will be sworn in by President Andrews at our November 17th meeting. We also elected Jameen Johnson as our new vice president, and we plan to hold elections for the position of secretary at our December meeting. Our expectation is to have a full board with all officer positions filled by the end of the year. At our next meeting on November 17th, we are scheduled to hear a presentation from John Bruel, Director of Risk Management. And if I could take one moment to just stray from my prepared remarks, I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation for all the commissioners in their discussion just now about some of the reasons why tenants may or may not be moving to high opportunity census tracts. I think it's a really important question, and I would encourage you all to evaluate that beyond just payment standards to look at what some of the reasons are, some of the obstacles are that prohibit tenants or prevent tenants from relocating to those areas, and to reach out to the tenant community to get their feedback on that, because I think it's very important. So thank you all for your time. Do you have any questions or comments?
I was glad you brought that up, Adam, because I was going to ask you actually about it, having that we just had this discussion. And so not going to put you on the spot at this moment, but I would be very interested in, from the perspective of the Resident Advisory Board, not anything, super formal, but, for the board's own thoughts on, those reasons for choosing to live where they do live or the voucher holders, whether there are things that they feel, what some of those barriers that you alluded to may be, and whether there are issues with the payment standards that you think would make it, or something else that would make a difference. So
I will definitely bring that to the board. I think everyone will enthusiastically, want to participate and provide some feedback to all the board members. And I'm also interested in continuing a dialogue on this issue. It's one that is very near and dear to me. And I think it's a very important issue. Again, above and beyond payment standards, there's a lot of other dynamics in the county that I think could help move the needle in getting some voucher holders to move to higher opportunity census tracts.
Right.
I just wanted to say ditto to what Commissioner Merkowitz said. I'm really so pleased you spoke up about that and really look forward to engaging with you and your committee and the residents more broadly on this journey. Because I think it's a really important question. And as everybody's pointing out, it's complicated and there's lots of facets to getting to the right answer. So thanks. My other question for you, though, is you had the presentation on our resident services portfolio and how we're doing. And how are we doing? And did the board recommend any changes or additions to what we're doing?
No, the board didn't really make any recommendations for changes to the resident advisory board. I think, a lot of these presentations that we get are to educate us on what HOC staff does, because there are just so many things that go on simultaneously in this organization and a lot of different moving parts. So I think our takeaway was just that they're doing a really good job at helping tenants, addressing their issues, addressing their concerns, helping them, whether that's with, any issues they may be having with their housing, any issues they may be having with financing their housing, if they're having problems making rent payments. I mean, there's just such a broad array of things that resident services provide. And we think from what we heard, they're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move back to the agenda, which is in fact committee reports for Budget, Finance, and the Administrative Committee that I chair. And the first presentation that we'll have is about our calendar year 2026 portfolio budget, and which is related to also the approval of the 27 county operating budget. So with that, I will turn to our president.
Thank you. Commissioners, every year we come before the commission as it pertains to our calendar year portfolio. These are our properties that are LIHTC properties, our low-income housing tax credit properties, as well as a handful of our LLCs that fall in the calendar year. This is separate and apart from our fiscal year property budgets. And as you know, we have many properties. And so the team does a great job of ultimately looking at our overall portfolio, looking at trends, and making some recommendations in regards to where we should land. I will note that these particular properties do not feed into our operating funds. And the budget officer and our finance team will provide further clarification about that. But ultimately, these property budgets did come before our Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee and received support to be advanced here. And with that, I will turn it over to Terry Fowler, our budget officer.
Thank you, President Andrews. For the record, my name is Terry Fowler, the budget officer. Good evening, commissioners and the viewing public and HOC team. Again, as President Andrews mentioned, this portfolio is separate and apart from our fiscal year budget that was adopted in June. And staff met with the leaders of property management and asset management to evaluate the continuing impacts we are feeling from the COVID-19 that have caused increased vacancy loss, maintenance costs, and bad debt to ensure these budgets being presented reflect our best understanding of how long we will continue to see the impacts. And we do see a greater impact in the budgets through the first half of calendar 2026. Keep in mind, this is beyond our control, as many of our partners are impacting the length of time it takes to get through the court system and in effect turn the units to a tenant that is paying rent. Historically, this portfolio included only our tax credit budgets. And if you'll see that we now have 17 tax credit budgets. There are 15 partners and one has 3 properties. But we also have 2 other properties, the Lindley and the Laureate, that operate on a calendar year basis as well. And therefore, they are included in this packet. If we can turn to page 4 of the packet. Thank you. As was mentioned, the cash flow for this portfolio is restricted to the properties. However, HOC is responsible for covering any loss on stabilized properties. And we are anticipating a loss at Lasco Manor of approximately $85,000. This loss also includes the payment of a management fee to HOC. And many times we're asked, why do we budget for that payment to be made if we're projecting a loss? There have been times when performance exceeded budget, and therefore we do fully charge the property for its appropriate cost. And if at year end it has a deficit, then those funds are returned, but this allows for the charging of all appropriate fees. In the middle of the page, you'll see that the budgeted rent increases are proposed at the current county executive voluntary rent guideline of 3.3%. There are a few properties included in this portfolio that have project-based rental assistance, and those subsidies, therefore, the rent increases are based on the latest operating cost adjustment factor, and the budgeted increases for those properties can go up to that factor. Within the portfolio presented today, Waverly House has been set at 3.3% and 4.6% based on the 2025 OCAF rate of 4.6% for Maryland. If we go to the chart on page 11 of the packet, and I realize this contains a lot of information, but the key point in this chart are the right columns that show, although the cash flow is restricted, the agency does receive partnership management fees from the properties if there is sufficient money to first pay the asset management fee to the investor. We are projecting approximately $170,000, which is an increase of 3.9% from those fees projected for the current calendar 25. All the properties are budgeted to have adequate cash flow to generate enough fees to pay the fees, with the exception of Lasco Manor, as mentioned previously. It is also worth noticing that any unpaid fees are accrued for future years when cash flow becomes available. If we go to page 14 of the packet, please. As mentioned previously, similar to our fiscal year portfolio, many of the properties are experiencing the continued impacts. As mentioned, staff anticipates these challenges will result in greater bad debt, vacancy loss, and maintenance expenses through the first half of calendar 26, as we work to regain and turn the units and restore normal rental payments for the units. 10 properties are projected to experience a decrease in NOI, while the 7 remaining properties project increases averaging 3.9%. If we can go to the next slide, please. The minimum debt service coverage ratio requirement of 1.15 to 1 or higher is projected to be achieved for all of the LIHTC properties, with the exception of Alexander House, which is projecting a 1.12 coverage, and the Leggett, which is projecting a 1.05 coverage. If we can go back to the slide on page 11 for a moment to discuss the non-tax credit properties that are operated on a calendar year. The laureate projects effective income to remain flat, with higher gross rents and parking income offset by the slightly higher vacancy loss that we anticipate at the beginning of the year. Our operating expenses are projected to grow. A large portion of this is the taxes that are paid on the retail portion of the property that was not available at the time the calendar 25 budget was developed. So that increased the cost by about $120,000. Again, we do see increases in bad debt and maintenance, but staff and the management company are working diligently to implement cost-saving measures where can be. And if a budget amendment is warranted, we'll come back in a future commission meeting for that purpose. If you look at the income for the Lindley, it is projected to decrease. However, that's largely due to an accounting treatment. The budget for 25 showed a draw from the Opportunity Housing Fund Reserve to pay the debt service payment to the mezzanine lender. So you had both the income and the expense on the property. The auditors have requested that that be treated as a balance sheet entry. So when you look at the NOI, you see the full negative impact of removing the draw. But when you look at the total cash flow, the net impact to the bottom line is zero because you've also reduced and removed the debt service payment. If we were excluding both of those, income would have only decreased by 0.4%. And that's based primarily on the increase in vacancy and moving concessions to address the occupancy challenges. Operating expenses are projected to grow 5.1%, and due primarily to the same reasons we've mentioned for previous properties. The last slide I'd like to present is on page 18 of the packet. This is the capital budgets for the portfolio. Each year, a capital analysis is completed to see if the properties can support the projected budget. And with the exception of the Lindley, all have sufficient balances to support the proposed capital budgets. The Lindley RFR contribution was increased by $43,000 to address the budgeted capital needs. This is similar to the practice that was implemented when we developed the calendar 25 budget as well. That concludes the presentation, and I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve resolution number 2567?
So moved.
Probably moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is again, going to the county's operating budget, authorizing us to submit our 27 requests to the operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start by really highlighting how appreciative we are for the county's ongoing support as it pertains to our resident services program, as well as some capital funds that the county has provided year over year. You will note that in this request, which we also provided an overview of at our Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting, that we are requesting sustaining support for the programs that the county has previously supported, but we're also lifting up some additional new requests. I will just say that our experience has been that you don't get what you don't ask for. And so we have turned the page of holding back on asking. And last year we requested additional support from the county and they delivered. And so in that spirit, we are thinking through ways that the county can continue to support our work. There is a new request, and of course, the budget officer will go through this in more detail. Ms. Fowler will, but I want to just lift up the Fatherhood Initiative grant. First of all, as that program wound down after a wonderful 10-year term, it was extraordinarily successful, very impactful in terms of the many fathers that were able to take advantage of the program. And with the creative engineering of our Vice President of Resident Services, Davita Rowley, we've explored a way to continue this program in a modified approach, one that allows us to lean on our partners, but also with hopefully the county's support, continue the staffing that we need. This will allow us, if supported, to serve up to 240 families. And I say families because it's the fathers, but it's really the full family that benefits from these programs. And so this is a new request. Just to be clear, despite the fact that our funding has wound down in Fatherhood Initiative, in the interim, the team has done a tremendous job in terms of bridging the gap. And we have continued our program. There was a cohort that was ready to go. We figured out how we could continue, and we will be, hopefully, I will claim, successful in this request to the county. You will note that there's also a request for support around HQ. And this is something that hopefully won't be too new to the county, as we have in the past. Many years ago, when we moved into this beautiful schoolhouse, sought support of the county in regards to a new headquarters. We are thinking strategically on how to lift this request up, obviously honing in on the support that we need for the many employees that will be providing resident services from our headquarters. There's the general additional expense that we have just in terms of debt service, but also for parking. We're uniquely situated in the sense that while other county departments do not get any discount on county parking, they also get funds for their operations. So on the one hand, they get funded for parking from the county, and then they still pay the same amount for parking, but it's a wash. For us, without that additional balance or support, we really would be providing an extra revenue source to the county, one in which we really believe could be best suited towards the mission. And so we'll be seeking that support as well as lifting up our overall request. I just wanted to give those two highlights in terms of some of our new requests here. I'll turn it over to our budget officer, Terry Fowler, to provide more details.
Thank you, President Andrews. As was mentioned, we are required to submit a fiscal 27 operating budget to the County Office of Management and Budget. They had a staggered submission that started on October 17th and ran through October 31st, but they understand that our meetings are not always at the same schedule, so we did get approval to submit our budget following this evening's commission meeting, assuming there is approval for that submission. If we can turn to page 2 of the packet. And if we can go down a little more to the chart, please. Oh, I'm sorry, it rolled over to page 3. When we submit our MARC, which stands for the maximum agency request ceiling, we are requested to submit it at the same level that our previous year's adopted budget was. And that was approximately $9.2 million for the agency in fiscal 26. As President Andrews mentioned, the majority of this grant is directly related to providing services to our residents and primarily funding the salaries for the personnel providing those services. We also do receive support for some of our growing costs in our properties. We receive support for our customer service centers, and we are reimbursed for the rental license fees that we pay to the county. So bottom line, it's a wash, but we have to pay the fees and get reimbursed. Staff will submit this total, and notwithstanding that, if we go to the next page of the packet, as President Andrews mentioned, in addition to the 9.2 million, we are requesting $379,000 for cost adjustments related to the staff funded by the grant, and that is related to increases in salary and benefit costs. And 2 additional requests totaling 2.89 million. The first of that is the replacement funding for the Fatherhood Initiative grant that was not funded for a new 5-year tranche. And that total is approximately $617,000, and funding to support the costs associated with the new agency's headquarters of approximately $2.3 million. The requested adjustments and competition list requests will be discussed during the budget. Thank you.
That number make you choke?
I'm probably not the only one that'll choke. But this request will be submitted based on commissional approval. And during the budget process, we will go through the county approval process and incorporate it as deemed by the county into our agency budget process that will begin in January through June. And I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the commissioners?
More by way of a comment / question on the Fatherhood Initiative grant. I've seen some of the you shared some of the studies that have been done and really impressive work. Are we doing anything to follow the participants so we can see later what kind of outcomes we're getting?
And I'd have to defer to our Vice President of Resident Services to understand how long and what that data is. I know that we do exit surveys. I know that we help fund support for their endeavors in terms of entrepreneurial and ongoing education. I'm not certain what the level of engagement is in terms of required response after someone leaves our program. But what I can say is that the alumni in this program wholeheartedly return back. They participate in programs, they show up and celebrate other fathers, and they're deeply engaged. There was definitely some deep dives that took place. We were selected to participate in a study that took place, and that study I know looked at the fathers that were in our program. But I'm not certain what the extent was after they completed the program.
Just thinking about our ability to attract money more broadly for something like this, if, sort of demonstrating, even if we can't do it with scientific certainty, maybe just do surveys or something like that we're getting better outcomes for the kids specifically, for example, would be really powerful.
Right.
Hard to do, I know, but just something to think of.
I'm not certain that I will say that while we participated in the study, I'm not certain that there was an approach towards this longitudinal study for our program. I'd have to circle back to get more details.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, can I get a motion to approve resolution number 25-68?
So moved.
Probably moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. No order.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm always embarrassing Cherry whenever she comes up here for a presentation, so I'm going to give her a break today. With that, let me move the agenda to the Development and Finance Committee. Chair Kevin Merkowitz.
Thank you. One item on our agenda today from this committee has to do with a pool of consultants for research policy, planning, and zoning issues. And I will turn it over to President Andrews for discussion.
Thank you. Commissioners, as you know, we are very active in the real estate activities and space that we are in, and we rely upon and have the ability to partner with both our private partners, but also consultants along the way. And so this is a request related to a pool that we have that we take advantage of depending on different needs over the course of our engagements. And so I would like to turn it over to our Senior Executive Vice President, Kayreen Brown, to provide this recommendation and presentation.
Thank you, President Andrews. Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public and staff in general. For the record, I'm Kayreen Brown, Senior Executive Vice President, and with me is Walker Taylor, Senior Financial Analyst in the Real Estate Development Group. We're requesting your approval of creation of a pool of research, planning, zoning consultants for the real estate efforts at the commission. Can you go slide 3? There you are. For many years, we've engaged the help of planning and zoning consultants to support the real estate effort for HOC. And initially we had, back in 2016, just a planning and zoning consultant. And we entered into contracts with Share Partners and Townscape Design, LLC. And they've been pretty helpful in assisting us with scoping out opportunities for increased density for across the county, where we've had existing projects where we needed to be at the table with planning, just ensuring that as the planning department upzoned areas of the county, that our projects were considered and that we were optimizing the density in our, at our sites. As examples, where we had Belinley, where we had where we redeveloped the Hillendale project, and just generally across the county. And they provided guidance to us as to, what we can achieve with regard to our properties. Some, had only a handful of units, and there were huge opportunities for us to maximize affordable housing where we were, as well as to identify opportunities for acquisitions where the county was contemplating increasing densities, and we could acquire and potentially redevelop sites across the county. And so in 2020, we expanded the opportunity and went out for the possibility of creating a pool. And we only had 2 applicants, both of them Share Partners and Townscape Design. And that pool expired, and now we're here. We issued an RFQ to continue with these services, but we expanded it for research, planning, and zoning. We put an RFQ out on the street, and we had 4 applicants this time. So 2 existing applicants and 2 more. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this time around, we had 4 applicants. As I said, the 2 existing firms that were in the pool, as well as 2 new ones, Econosalt Solutions, which is a firm out of Philadelphia. And then we also had Moore & Associates, who partnered with Ballard Spahr. Ballard Spahr is in our legal pool as well, but this is a different arm of Ballard. And they've jointly submitted a proposal also to support our efforts. And we've created an internal panel consisting of our staff who've scored them, and they all have scored over 75, which is the threshold for adding them to the pool. And so we're here proposing, and we're recommending that all 4 be considered for the pool. Now, in considering them for the pool, again, they've met the threshold. Staff proposes and recommends that they be added, and that the president executive director would enter into a $0 contract with each of the firms. That means when we're ready to engage any of them for work as appropriate throughout the county, we would create a task order with a scope detailed, And based on their timing, availability, and the nature of the work that we require, we would evaluate the proposals that are submitted and as well as their pricing and select from among the best proposal. Their cost would be funded from pre-development budget that would have been approved by the commission or from the real estate development budget, depending on the scope and nature of it. And we would select the best suited for the work that we're seeking. Let's see if there's anything else. So the firms are, as I said, they've been vetted. They're all qualified to be part of the pool. And so we would go about the work based on what our needs are. Is there anything else? Can you go to slide 5 and see if there's anything else that needs to be said? This request was vetted by the Development and Finance Committee and who unanimously support the recommendation. And so if there are questions, we can answer them, but the firms are, as I said, well qualified, and we'd like them to be added to this new pool to be available to work for the commission. So I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission? If not, I will make a motion to approve resolution 25-69. Is there a second?
It's been probably moved and seconded to approve resolution 25-69. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to recess the meeting in order to convene the Development Corporation meetings? There a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We will now convene the Development Corporation meetings that are listed on the agenda. Development corporations are entities that are wholly controlled by HOC and owns various properties. For each development corporation, the board of directors is comprised of the HOC commissioners, and the officers are the same as the officers of the commission. I am now calling the meeting of the Alexander House Development Corporation to order. Is there a second to approve the minutes from October the 8th, 2025? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Brookside Glen Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October the 8th, 2025? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Diamond Square Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October the 8th, 2025?
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Glenmont Crossing Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of October the 8th, 2025? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Glenmont Westerly Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October 28th, 2025? Second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Metropolitan Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October the 8th, 2025? Second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Montgomery Arms Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October the 8th, 2025? Second.
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Magruder Discovery Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from October the 8th, 2025?
So
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. I now call the meeting of the Region Metro Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October the 8th, 2025?
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. This concludes the Development Corporation meetings. We now reconvene HOC's regular monthly meeting. Pursuant to Section 3-305B and D of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt the written closing statement dated November the 12th, 2025, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss proposed changes to a joint venture at a property located in Deerwood. HOC must discuss this topic in closed session to protect the confidential commercial and financial information. Section 3-305B13 permits this topic to be discussed in closed session. If a member of the public that's watching this meeting in real time on the YouTube wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's General Counsel. Instructions can be found in the Open Meetings Act Objection Procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. The meeting is closed as of 5:57 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.